but I'm still a little suspicious about the timing and how it's all rolled out here.
Yeah, it's been about 20 plus years, man, and they finally doing something about it, man.
Oh, 27, brother. 27.
They say time heals all wounds, but for Tupac's family, the pain has only grown heavier. Nearly 30 years after that fateful night in Las Vegas, the questions around who truly orchestrated his end still echo. And now, those whispers have found a voice. Tupac's own brother, Mopreme Shakur. He stepped forward, and this time, he isn't holding back.
Watching us, all up us. But then, actually, not a cop. You know, so the diehards is going to hate him forever, even though the cops were wrong, in the wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I have a lot of people that feel like that's the reason why they didn't, even solve his and it's been 27 years, because they was like, yo, he show off-duty cops, he ain't like cops, so why we gonna help him?
Yeah.
What he revealed has shaken Tupac's fans to their core. In a rare and emotional admission, Mopreme Shakur cast doubt on Diddy's innocence, openly questioning the mogul's ties to one of hip-hop's darkest nights. If family blood itself refuses to accept the official story, what does that say about the version of truth the world has been fed? For decades, the Las Vegas shooting was treated as a tragedy, neatly tied shut, a superstar gunned down, the Strip glowing in chaos, and a narrative too clean to challenge. But now, that so-called final chapter may not have been final at all.
I heard what he said, but, this shit been so chaotic, I ain't know which way to go until you find out more information. And yeah, that was early 2000s.
Tupac's brother has turned the story upside down. He insists that what the world was told back then was nothing but a smokescreen crafted to conceal something far bigger. According to Mopreme, Tupac wasn't just another casualty of that September night. The truth, he suggests, points to a shocking possibility that Tupac may have slipped away from the spotlight and into the shadows.
There was a point where was even considering going to Bad Boy before his relationship with Death Row. He's considering going Bad Boy to because he wanted to be on a black label. He wanted to be with his people. He wanted to be with the brothers. You know what I mean? He supported black business. So there was a period where we were all cool. And over time, things happened, started seeing things. And, Biggie was on Puffy's label. So, with them two, it was Puffy calling the shit.
And if that's true, then the danger Tupac faced was no random act. It was tied to one of hip-hop's most powerful figures, a name that refuses to fade from the whispers, Diddy. Suddenly, the story no longer feels solid. The ground shifts, because this time the accusations aren't coming from tabloids or faceless rumor mills. They're coming from family blood. Mopreme Shakur sat across from Piers Morgan, eyes fixed on the camera with the same fire that once burned in Tupac. When the subject turned to Diddy's repeated denials, Mopreme didn't flinch. He confessed what he's carried for decades. He's never believed them. In fact, he recalled telling Diddy nearly 20 years ago, one day, the truth will rise to the surface.
Because, law enforcement has problems of its own that is seldom dealt with. So, that trickles down. By the time it's time for us to get justice, that water way down. Everybody know there's corruption in law enforcement.
And now, almost 3 decades later, it feels like that tide is finally crashing in. Because if Tupac's own brother doesn't believe in Diddy's innocence, how much faith can anyone place in the official story we've been sold? Mopreme has begun speaking more openly about what he truly believes happened, especially in the wake of Keith D's recent arrest. To him, the timing is unsettling. After 27 long years of silence, only now does the case suddenly begin to move.
There's a lot of curious things about what's been happening. First of all, like everybody knows, the time period, 27 years.
He revealed that the family was never kept in the loop all these years, and with Keith D openly giving interviews for decades without consequence, Mopreme isn't impressed. To him, it feels like the truth was never hidden at all, just ignored.
Well, as far as the family is concerned, there was no, letting us know what was going on all through these years, after 2 years, after 5 years, after 10 years. We weren't kept abreast of things. So it's, okay, what's happening? What's really going on? Especially when this dude has been out there.
One of his deepest suspicions centers on crooked cops. He reminded everyone that on the very night Tupac was gunned down, Las Vegas police had already pulled them over for nothing more than loud music.
I know you was very vocal, man, about the police not doing their job, but how do it make you feel, man? After all these years of Keefe D doing interviews, talking about Tupac getting shot, him doing documentaries, he was on B, and after all these years, he get arrested.
Yeah, I feel mad.
That stop, combined with the LAPD's long history with the Shakur family and Tupac's own run-in with 2 off-duty officers, has left Mopreme convinced that law enforcement carried its own grudge. He even suggested that both Las Vegas and Los Angeles police may have had dirty hands in the way the case was handled.
You made a comment saying that you want to see how serious the LAPD is going to take this case because, it's a lot of people that Keefe D name dropped. And you want to see if the, LAPD is going to investigate them. And that's how you can tell, if the LAPD is taking it serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
He also didn't shy away from the toughest question since Keefe D himself once claimed Diddy put a bounty on Tupac. Mopreme wants to see whether investigators will finally take that seriously. To him, brushing off that angle would only prove that the system still isn't interested in uncovering the full truth.
After all these years of Keefe D doing interviews, talking about Tupac getting shot, him doing documentaries, he was on BET, and after all these years, he get arrested.
Yeah, I feel mad still that murdered my brother. First of all, that's that part, because it ain't even have to happen, because was the type of that will buy you. He will you, raise the money, and we'll give it to the hood. He will actually, you know what I mean?
But one detail can't just be brushed off as rumor. Back in 2008, Diddy himself reached out through radio host Big Boy to set up a private meeting with Mopreme. Think about that. One of hip-hop's most powerful moguls was so rattled by the whispers that he personally tried to smooth things over with Tupac's family.
The radio out here, and Big Boy, shout out to Big Boy, he hit me up. He was like, yo, man, Puffy, see, they want to talk to you about the whole situation about your brother. And, especially back then, I wanted all the information I could get. And I heard what he said, but, this been so chaotic, I ain't know which way to go until you find out more information. And yeah, that was the early 2000s.
Did Little C say anything to you?
Not that I recall.
Yeah, that sounds like a guy that's guilty, man. Him calling you trying to plead his innocence.
Surrounded by his crew, Diddy repeated again and again that he had nothing to do with the Vegas shooting, but Mopreme wasn't convinced. He looked him straight in the eye and said, "The truth always comes out." Those words echo even louder today, as time makes Diddy's denials look shakier than ever. If he was so certain back then, why do new cracks keep splitting open in the story? Why do the same insiders, the people closest to those nights, keep circling back to the same accusations?
Yeah, man, he could have been trying to cover his or he could have been sincere. We gonna see.
It's just too many attachments to Diddy, man. At some point, you got to start looking like, yo, what's going on? I mean, when Tupac got shot at Quad, they was talking about Diddy. When Tupac got in Vegas, they was talking about Diddy. At some point, man, you got to start looking at them like, yo, what's going on, yo?
Yeah, and you got people like, Kading is out, doing interviews and talking about, it'd be feeling like he got sympathy for Puffy because he was scared.
Mopreme's doubts don't stand in isolation. They tie into a trail of whispers that stretches back to 1996. In Los Angeles, it was quietly rumored that Diddy kept a crew ready to clean things up whenever trouble got too close. Witnesses who once seemed willing to speak suddenly fell silent, paralyzed by fear of him. Investigations slowed to a crawl. Evidence vanished. Is that why Tupac's case has remained frozen for nearly 30 years? Is that why only Keith D sits charged, while so many others have walked away untouched?
Yeah, he was scared. Yes, I agree. I do agree that he was probably terrified for his life. So if that is the case, it's also quite feasible that he put up money to get killed.
Even within law enforcement circles, Diddy's name never disappeared. Federal records reveal that in just one police interview, his name came up over 40 times in connection to Tupac's death. Today, Diddy's world of glitz and champagne is crumbling piece by piece. Once tied to platinum albums and endless parties, his name is now entangled in racketeering charges and federal heat. When agents raided his mansions, they didn't just stumble onto a few dirty secrets. They reportedly uncovered something explosive, files stamped with a single word: Cuba.
They was in any of those tapes. If they played a in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their brand.
That single word Cuba set off alarm bells because it ties directly to one of hip-hop's longest-running rumors, that Tupac never died in Las Vegas, but escaped to the same island where his aunt, Assata Shakur, has lived in exile for decades. For years, fans have sworn they've seen him there. A bald head, that unmistakable walk, the same piercing eyes, captured in shaky video clips along Havana's streets. So here's the question: why would Diddy have files pointing to Cuba? Could it be proof not only of his connection to the Vegas shooting, but also to keeping Tupac's truth buried? And Cuba isn't a new name in this story. Tupac's former bodyguard, Michael Nice, once claimed he helped pull off the escape. His tale sounded unbelievable. Castro himself gave approval. A body double was swapped at the hospital, and Tupac was flown to Barbados before quietly slipping into Havana.
I agreed with the doctor that he didn't have to witness the event. He could actually just turn his head, wash his hands or whatever. They quickly switched the bodies, one out of the ambulance, the Tupac, who'd recovered enough to get about fine by himself, he then transferred to the ambulance.
At first, people dismissed Michael Nice's story as pure fantasy, but just before he claimed he would release evidence, he suddenly turned up dead. Now, years later, federal raids uncover Cuban references in Diddy's files, and suddenly, that fantasy doesn't sound so far-fetched. And that's not the only thing that refuses to add up. How is it that no one spotted the shooter that night on the Vegas Strip? Why did the coroner's report list the wrong height and weight for Tupac? Why did the cremator abruptly retire right after handling his body? Even Suge Knight once fueled the fire, telling TMZ in 2014, "Why do you think nobody has been arrested? 'Cause Pac not gone." Individually, these details might look like coincidences, but stacked together, they begin to form something else entirely: a cover-up, a trail of deception stretching nearly 3 decades.
And the next step was to transfer him to an airstrip, again with a Hard Marks connection, one of his showbiz friends. We had a private plane waiting to get Tupac on board. So the next thing that happened was me and my brother met Tupac at the safe house.
Now Mopreme's words are echoing across headlines. He isn't reckless with what he says. He's careful, deliberate, and that's exactly why his doubts about Diddy cut so deep. Because if he truly believed in Diddy's innocence, he'd have no reason not to say it.
People is biased, you know. I get it. People, Big always gonna have somebody supporting him in some kind of way. You know, I think did work with Clark Kent a little bit. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, that's kind of and some need attention. Some niggas need to be attention, need to be in the conversation, need to say something, but you still talking about.
Instead of clearing Diddy's name, Mopreme keeps pointing to the shadows, the gaps in the story, and repeats what he's been saying for years: the truth will come out. Inside Diddy's courtroom battles, prosecutors are already hitting dead ends. One woman in the case, identified in legal files only as Victim 3, has vanished so completely that even her own lawyer can't reach her. If witnesses can disappear in 2025 under this much public scrutiny, imagine what could have happened in 1996 when Tupac's case was fresh, the stakes higher, and the shadows thicker. It raises a chilling question. Are we seeing the same playbook today that people whispered about back in the 90 seconds? A network built to silence inconvenient voices, a system designed to shield power. That's why the Cuba theory refuses to die. Every time a new lead surfaces, every time an insider speaks, Havana slips back into the conversation. Could Diddy have known Tupac wasn't dead at all, that he escaped to the Caribbean, hidden away in the same country where his aunt Assata Shakur still lives in exile? And if so, did he use that secret as leverage-building influence while the world mourned someone who may never have been buried? The federal raids on his homes only added fuel. Agents weren't just sifting through trophies and memorabilia, they were searching for something specific, and in the evidence logs, one phrase stood out: Cuba files. What did those files contain? Payment records, coded messages, proof Tupac boarded a plane instead of being wheeled into a morgue? Whatever it was sensitive enough to be hidden in plain sight. And that's where the shine falls off the bad boy brand. Behind the platinum plaques and champagne-soaked parties, the empire now looks less like a label and more like a crime syndicate in designer suits. Suddenly, the East Coast-West Coast feud of the 90 seconds feels small compared to what's surfacing. Prosecutors describe Diddy's infamous freak-offs not as wild parties, but as marathons of humiliation where he allegedly coerced people into acts they never wanted, filmed it, and kept the footage as blackmail.
Stretch was down with Thug Life. You know what I mean? He was our East Coast, part of our East Coast fraction. You know what I mean? He produced some actual albums as well as the Thug Life album. You know, they were boys. They were boys.
Yeah, the way he did yeah, that was two-faced.
Layer in accusations of trafficking, coercion, and silenced witnesses, and the image of a music mogul shifts into something closer to a cult leader. Former associates echo the same story. Bad Boy wasn't just a record label, it was a fortress. Inside, loyalty was demanded, debts ran deep, and saying no to Diddy could come with consequences. If that machine was already in motion back in 1996, it isn't hard to see how evidence could vanish, how witnesses could clam up, and how the truth could be buried before daylight ever hit. That's why the Vegas case has always felt cursed. And now, with federal agents ripping through his empire, the skeletons aren't just rattling, they're kicking the closet door wide open. The most unsettling of all? The so-called Cuba files. Just the mention of them sent conspiracy circles into overdrive. Were they encrypted notes from the 90 seconds? Records of payouts to silence people? Or the holy grail of hip-hop mystery proof that Tupac really did escape? For years, Havana locals have whispered about sightings a man with the same frame, the same walk, the same piercing eyes, caught in the blur of an alleyway or sipping coffee in a quiet cafe before vanishing again. If Diddy truly kept documents, recordings, or photos linking him to those rumors, it wouldn't just be curiosity. It would mean he wasn't a bystander at all. He was part of keeping the story buried. Maybe those Cuba files aren't just words on an evidence sheet. Maybe they're the missing link, the thread tying rumor to reality. What makes it even stranger is where those files surfaced. Not in some dusty Vegas police archive labeled unsolved, but in federal raids targeting trafficking and coercion. That timing suggests something far bigger. Diddy's past and present may not be separate at all. It's as if the mogul lifestyle and the criminal underworld were two sides of the same coin, protecting each other for decades. Now picture investigators cracking those boxes open and finding direct links to Cuban contacts. The fallout would be massive. A search meant to dismantle Diddy's empire today could accidentally blow open hip-hop's greatest mystery, what really happened to Tupac. But the bigger twist isn't just about paper trails, it's about power. If those files are real, then helping Tupac disappear wasn't something one man could pull off. It would have required allies in high places, politicians willing to look the other way, networks shuffling money, maybe even intelligence agencies keeping the secret because it served them. A cover-up like that doesn't survive 30 years by chance. It survives because people with influence want it that way. Which raises a chilling question: how many powerful figures have been protecting this secret, and why? For Tupac's family, those files wouldn't just be answers, they'd be salt in the wound. Proof that he lived would also mean proof that the world was deceived. While fans mourned and turned him into a legend, insiders may have cashed in, shaping his story, owning his royalties, and controlling his legacy from the shadows. A revelation like that wouldn't just tarnish reputations, it would shake the foundation of hip-hop's golden era to its core.
Would have boxed him. Would have loved to beat his ass in the ring, raise some money, and give it to the hood. It ain't have to be like...
And looming over all of this is Suge Knight, the man behind the wheel, the night the bullets flew, the man who built an empire, then watched it collapse. Now locked away with nothing left to lose, he may be more dangerous than ever. For years, Suge has dropped cryptic breadcrumbs. In 2014, he even flat-out claimed Tupac wasn't dead, asking why no one had ever been arrested if he truly was. So, if Mopreme is speaking out now, what happens if Suge finally decides to unload everything he knows? Imagine him testifying, laying out the pieces, maybe even pointing directly at Diddy. With his rival in the crosshairs, he'd have every reason to drag him down. And if Suge is sitting on tapes, documents, or just the raw truth, the fallout wouldn't just rock the music industry, it would be catastrophic. And here's the terrifying part. What if the whispers were real all along? If prosecutors prove Diddy wasn't just throwing wild parties but running a criminal syndicate, then nothing stays off limits. Suddenly, the bounty rumors, the silenced witnesses, the flawed coroner's report, even the theory of Tupac's escape to Cuba, all of it gets pulled into the spotlight. Now imagine the headlines: Tupac alive, Diddy tied to cover up. That wouldn't just end a mogul's career, it would rewrite the entire history of hip-hop in real time. Every denial, every flashy performance, every interview would be re-watched through a new lens of suspicion. And the question we'd all be left asking is chillingly simple. How far was he willing to go to keep the truth buried? Right now, it feels like we're standing on the edge of something massive. Mopreme's revelations may be the first crack in the wall. Suge Knight could be holding the real explosives, and prosecutors are pulling at every thread they can find. After nearly 3 decades, the puzzle that's been locked away is finally coming apart. So what do you think? Was Tupac really taken that night under the neon glow of Dryden inside the Strip? Or has he been living in the shadows while others cashed in on his legacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over. In fact, it feels like it's only just beginning. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind sharp, and remember, the truth always finds a way back, no matter how deep it's buried.